the destiny of civilization, finance capitalism, industrial capitalism, or socialism. And everything that I just prefaced this interview with, discussing the economic war in Russia and sanctions and decoupling, this is all deeply related to what you talk about in this book. And I had the pleasure of getting an early copy and reading through it. It's a really important book, I think. And you talk about this fundamental divide internationally. And this is a divide that actually goes back historically as well, between these three models for different economic systems you discuss: finance capitalism, industrial capitalism, and socialism. And your argument is that the US empire has been a force for imposing neoliberalism, which is a particular form of finance capitalism, which is non-productive, in which finance capital destroys productive industries in pursuit of rent seeking and what you call the rentier class. So instead of producing, as the classical bourgeois economists had said capitalism would be a productive system, instead, finance capitalism is fundamentally a system of destruction and debt. And your argument is that this is deeply rooted in U.S. foreign policy. This is the U.S. foreign policy strategy for expanding its economic power, is imposing this finance capitalist model on the world. So can you expand further on your argument about the fight between finance capitalism, industrial capitalism, and socialism, and why you decided to publish this book now?
Well, the book came out of a series of 10 lectures that I did for my Chinese audience. I've been a professor at Peking University for a number of years in economics, and have professorships at other universities, Wuhan and Hong Kong. And I have a fairly large audience of about 65,000 people for lecture there. And I was asked to give my general overview, sort of a history of economic development in the West for the Chinese. And in order to understand today's finance capitalism, you have to understand what industrial capitalism was as it was described in the 19th century. And it's often forgotten or played down that industrial capitalism was revolutionary. What it was trying to do, from the physiocrats in France in the late 18th century to Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill, Marx, and the whole late 19th century flowering of socialism, the ideal of classical value theory and rent theory was to say what is the actual value, the cost value of producing goods and services, and what is earned by the capitalist and when he employs labor to make a profit, and what is unearned. And what's unearned was the landlord class. That was the hereditary warrior class that had conquered all of the European kingdoms in the Middle Ages. And the attempt by England's industrialists was saying, look, we cannot become the workshop of the world. We cannot undersell foreign countries if we have a landlord class raking off all of the money in land rent, and if we have predatory banking, where the wealthy people just lend really for buying property or making distress loans or predatory loans that have nothing to do with financing actual capital formation. Well, what made this capitalism revolutionary was the British industrialists and advocacy of industry. Even the bankers in Ricardo's time said, well, in order to overthrow the landlord class, which controls the House of Lords and all of the upper chambers of government in Europe, we have to have democratic reform. If we have democratic reform and give voting to the people, they're going to vote against the landlord class. And then we can have an efficient economy where our prices of our exports and our goods and services reflect the actual cost of production, not the rake-off for the rentier class, not the rake-off of what landlords take, not the rake-off of what predatory bankers take. And the whole long 19th century leading up to World War I was this revolutionary value theory that depicted land rent and monopoly rent and financial returns as being unearned income and wanting to strip it away. And all of this seemed to be moving towards socialism. the industrialists were all in favor of government public utilities, of government enterprise, because they said if the government doesn't provide health care, then individuals are going to have to pay it, and it'll cost a lot of money, like it does in the United States. And so you had the conservative Prime Minister of England, Benjamin Disraeli, saying, health, all is health. We've got to provide public health for the people. And it was the conservative Bismarck in Germany that says, we've got to provide pensions. If labor has to save up for the pensions, then it's not going to have enough money to buy the goods and services that we Germans are producing. We've got to make pensions public. So all of this move towards socialism was not only in favor of increasing living standards, which soared in the 19th century, but also in freeing economy from the rentier class, from the landlords, from the bankers. And for the classical economist, a free market was a market free from landlords, free from bankers, free from monopolists. Well, needless to say, the rentiers fought back. And by after World War II, we've seen a continual anti-classical theory, replacing the classical idea of free markets with a value-free theory, saying, well, everybody earns whatever they have. All wealth is earned, not unearned. And if Goldman Sachs partners are paid more than anyone else, that's because they're so productive. So you had to move rejecting classical economics to junk economics and a kind of artificial economics that doesn't really talk about how finance capitalism has worked. And as it turns out, the business plan of finance capitalism was so predatory that it was anti-industrial. That's why President Clinton in the United States moved to invite China into the International Labor Organization, saying, well, we can fight wage rises in America by a race to the bottom. We can hire Asians to do work, and that will cause unemployment here, and that's wonderful for the industrialists. It will basically cut wages and keep American wages down. Well, that basically is the strategy of finance capitalism, and the aim of finance capitalism is not to invest in factories and plant and equipment and research and development, but to live in the short term, but to make money by financial engineering, not industrial engineering. And it becomes predatory. And so you have the whole ideological attack on public enterprise. You have Frederick Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, where you say if the government provides public health care, that's the road to serfdom, where actually it's finance capitalism that's the road to debt peonage and serfdom. You have now a whole disparagement of government, and all of this is a counter-revolution to the revolutionary impetus of industrial capitalism in its early stages. And it's true that corporations now are just as right-wing as the banks and the hedge funds, but that's because the corporate industry has been taken over by the financial sector, and the heads of almost every industrial corporation are rewarded to how high they can push the stock price to exercise the stock options they're paid in. And you increase the stock price not by investing more, not by hiring more labor or increasing productivity or increasing sales, but simply by using whatever income you have to buy back your stocks. And by buying back your stocks, this forces up their price. And most of all, by giving political contributions in this country to the Democrats and Republicans alike to appoint Federal Reserve heads that have spent $7 to $9 trillion buying up stocks and bonds to increase the price of buying a retirement income, to increase Wall Street prices, to increase housing prices, and make America even less competitive industrially. So finance capitalism is what is essentially deindustrialized the United States and turned the Midwest into a Rust Belt. Well, the alternative, obviously, is our societies that have not followed this neoliberal finance capitalist plan. And the most successful economy, obviously, has been China, which is why I've been spending so much time there. And Obviously China has done exactly what 19th century United States, Germany, England, and France did. It's kept basic utilities, basic needs, housing, and above all, finance and banking in the public domain as public utilities. Instead of having an independent financial sector operating on its own self-interest, the Bank of China creates the money. And the Bank of China lends money by deciding, where do we need to have investment in real estate to provide housing for the population at as low a price as we can make it? How do we provide, build up the industry? How do we provide an educational system with training? How do we provide health? And you have, the fact is that the central planning in a efficient socialist style, not the Stalinist planning that everybody refers to of Russia, but a mixed economy, as you have in China, which is truly a mixed economy, with guidance, like the French call planification. Well, that is obviously the way in which you survive, and you avoid the kind of overloading the economy with debt service, with high rents, with high payments to the healthcare monopoly in the United States, by avoiding all of this payment to a rentier class that has what the classical economists called unearned income, predatory income. And instead of unseating them, we've put them in charge and made the banks and Wall Street and the City of London and the Paris Bourse the central planners. So we do have central planning, much more centralized than anything that was dreamed by the socialists. But the planning, centralized planning, is done by the financial sector. And financial planning is short-termism. It's short-term planning. It's taking your money and run. And that's what is stripping and impoverishing the global economy today.